you've seen my CV. I'm a bit of a mix of corporate person, been working PwC, Fortis, BNP Paribas, GSK, always around project director of PMO, now sustainability transformation. So I have that field work experience plus academic, publishing books, researching, and then PMI, big passion. As many of you volunteered, chairman of the board in 2016. My whole focus since maybe 20 years has been not on teaching project managers how to do their projects, but how to convince senior leaders of the value of project management. So that's where my external focus is almost 100% dedication when I do outreach and work. I think I want to set the scene. I want to tell you about some trends that I see in project management, and then I come to another part of the second part, which is about the future of projects. So I think what is happening is that the world is seeing the more amount of projects that we're going to see in the next decade. We've never seen that before. I did some research, and if you look at the Marshall Plan, how much money was invested, which about 13 billion at that time, financial crisis in 2008, which hit the bank I was working for, Fortis, 3 trillion. And if you look at any statistics, this is already outdated, but that means investment for reconstruction of the economy, healthcare, and so on. The world will never see the amount of projects that we're going to see in the next decade. That's millions of project managers. So that's a bit setting the scene. On top of that, the technologies that we started to see slowly, these are going to accelerate. So we saw digital coming up very fast after the pandemic was announced, but many other technologies are going to pop up much faster. So we'll see lots of disruption in that sense. So we're going very fast, a lot of investment. So this is very what I call the project economy. I thought about the project economy maybe 5 years ago. I thought, well, this is changing, and now it's clear that we're there. There is another phenomenon that this happens within organization, which is the way work is carried out. And over 80 years, coming from Taylor, specialization, Henry Ford, mass production, most of the businesses were structured and focused on operations. That's the core, that's the centerpiece. That's what everything happened. Revenues were bringing from that, and projects were just temporary things and always a secondary thing. If people had to choose, it was always operations. And I'm glad to say this is changing. So what you see in for example, in banks, operations is mostly done by technology. There's more IT people than bankers today in many banks. And so when artificial intelligence and robots will hit mainstream industries, that's going to be a huge shift. There will be less resources doing projects, operationals, and most of these resources shift to do project-based work. And by project-based work, I include agile teams, self-directed teams. It's all very, very lean in terms of execution. So that's a huge shift. This is affecting industry by industry very, very fast. The future of work is project-based. Again, a project in the big term. One of my mission has been convincing Harvard Business Review of this. So I am glad to share with you here exclusively that in November issue, December, I'm publishing this article with HBR Printed Magazine, which is the biggest trendsetter in the world of business and management. And we agree that the title is "The Project Economy is Here." So we're not ready, we need to get ready. So I'm very excited about that. And I think that's going to help us to position projects as the main engine for change and delivering not just revenues, but impact and social impact and sustainable impact. So that's kind of the project economy. I want to cover what are the consequences, what's happening with this. One of them is the two words that I presented, the one driven by operations and the one driven by change, are opposite. This is day and night. And these are elements that impact an organization, like culture, like skills, like the structure that you see at the bottom, very different. So many organizations are struggling because most of the established organizations have been set up to be successful in a world driven by efficiency, but they're not set up to be successful in a driven by change, and they struggle a lot. Startup companies, they will start straight on that right side. They're agile, they're fast, very collaborative, entrepreneurship, project-based. So I think this is where many big established companies are struggling. Middle-sized too, is we're moving from a culture, command and control and discipline to much more entrepreneurship, collaborative. The focus is about efficiency, volumes, cost, strategic planning. It was very important strategic planning. Now it's more about implementation, right? So this is huge changes. Companies still have yearly operating plans. What's that? What's a year for a business? You could do that when the world was stable. Now yearly operating plans, this is all stuff. So there is huge transformation going on. In terms of skills, this is super important. I will talk about that a bit later. We have always grown with the concept of deep expertise. And that means 25 years doing the same in marketing, in finance, operations, IT, coming from Henry Ford and Taylor 80 years ago, but we kept that model. So if you were not an expert in one thing, if you were a project manager, you would be a generalist and you would not have a career path. There's very, very few project managers that made it to the CEO position. Most of the CEO come from finance, operations, sales, right? So we didn't have a career then. Very important role, chief operating officer. Well, that role is dead. We don't need chief operating officers anymore. And this is good news because I think the future is more about chief project officer, chief transformation. Remember the first picture with the trend. 60–80% of the work carried out in an organization will be done project-based. This is massive. Before maybe it was 5%. Now we're going to 80%. So that's a big, big shift. And the last point I want to share here is just the structure. Hierarchies are slow. It slows you down, hierarchies. We need that in some places and parts of the organizations, but they don't work in an agile world and a fast world. So we go to our more project-based team. Interesting, I don't know if you work in a PMO, and I'm going to talk about that. PMOs, the way we've learned about them, are always a box in a hierarchy, right? So that's dead also. The PMOs are dead too, because the hierarchies will slowly phase out. So the concept of PMO that we believe are dead. And I want to talk about that later. I think the biggest change, and project managers are not used to that, is that over these 80 years, 40 years, revenues of a business were coming 80, 90%, 95% from the operations. Yes, selling. Projects will hardly deliver any tangible benefits in the short term for sure, revenues. Yeah, and now we're saying, well, operations will shift, and where the future means that project managers, change managers, agile people need to bring revenues short term in 6 months. Tell me which projects are going to deliver revenues. We're not used to that. We're not used to that. We like more the fluffy things. Intangible benefits. No, if companies want to survive, we need to deliver projects that bring revenues. So massive change as well in the way we operate. Another consequence is companies will not need job descriptions. I don't know if you all have a job descriptions. That's an old thing. It doesn't work. So all the companies I talked, do you have a job description? Yes, we're 10,000 people. We have 10,000 job descriptions. Who works in a job description anymore, right? So that's that. Great example from the chairman of Emaar, the Dubai's based this huge conglomerate. The chairman writing an email to everybody. And he said at the end, when you reach the end of this email, you notice some difference. I have no job title. And from this moment, you too. So I think this is drastic. I think it's exciting because I don't think we've seen so much change happening at once, very fast, and where we can play a role. I say where we can play, we need to change many things. I think this has been probably the most stupid battle I've seen in my research over the past 20 years. Agile versus waterfall. Agile is sexy, waterfall is old. Agile is, you cannot control, it's a waste of time. Why did we spend, I just don't know, but I was part of that, and I think that's so wrong. That created so much failure. I'm going to talk about the poor performance in project management, and I think this is one of them because we're not using the right tools. So one size fits all, you use project management for everything. I'm guilty. I've put out a few project management methodologies for all the projects, following phases, using project charters. What a mistake I did. And I think many people in this profession. And then Agile comes and say, forget, throw this project management lifecycle to the bin, and it's over, use Agile, it's not, no paper, it's just more simple. It's mistake, big mistake. I think what we need to go, and this is what I'm covering with this HBR book that comes out in 2 weeks. We need a tool set. We need a tool set. It's all a hybrid. It's a mixed digital transformation. You cannot do Agile. I'm sorry. You need to have a mix of project and program. You have pieces that you can do in Agile. Of course, why not? So I think this is the future, is tool set. You need to do some, why not, continuous improvement and Lean Startup and Six Sigma. So these are tools and competencies that we need to develop. And I was so wrong trying to push project management as the only tool or method. I cannot believe that now when I look backwards. But anyway, that was the past. The future is right. I think there's very few professions that has neglected technology as much as project management. We're still managing projects with Excels. This is 40-year-old software, or 30 years, MS Project, 30 years old software. And that's it. If you're a bit lucky, you might use Planyware, Primavera, a bit of the new things which are more collaborative. But have we really used technology in project management? Have we used artificial intelligence? No. And I don't know why. I think we've been skeptical. We might be afraid. I don't know what we've not embraced. You've probably seen that, but Gartner was predicting 80% of what we do today as project managers will disappear. When I saw this, I said, wow, a bit scared, but then I said, oh, I'm super happy. Yes, finally, I will not need to chase people for their reports. I will not need to do reports. 80%, imagine, one day only of work, what I'm doing now. When I talk about this project, when I say, what's going to happen with the other 4 days? I'm scared they were going to be replaced. Well, no, you need to change. We need to change. We need to focus more on value and other things that we not focus, but the bureaucratic, the administrative stuff, which is about 50% of project management, will be gone. And I hope not by 2030. I hope that by 2025 or tomorrow, I hope we can start using technology very quickly. So I've in researching for the book, I've got in touch with people who are kind of early visionaries, but I've seen machine learning doing selection of projects, an algorithm that learns and can help you to make decisions on which project has more possibilities to deliver. I think they had 61 factors in there. I've seen machine learning to do the scoping of your project. Also in 5 minutes, you could assess the scope of your project and see whether it's well established or not. Build plans. I've seen a software that makes a plan based on big data in again 15 minutes instead of 15 days or 3 months. So imagine you press the button, you have a plan, pretty much accurate. We know plans will change anyway, right? So why would you spend now 3 months on a plan? We need plans. I'm a big fan still of traditional or waterfall or hybrid. Automation, the whole follow-up and reporting, what a mess. I hate that. Maybe it's a good school to start with as a project assistant, but I don't think we should be doing that. And then all the role of the PMO, the support and advice. Why don't we have a bot who takes care of that? So massive disruption to the point that our traditional project life cycle, which has been there for 40 years, and where I still struggle now that I look at from a bit bigger picture. I struggle to understand our project life cycle, to be honest. Why ideation has never been taken into account? Why they tell us, forget about innovation and ideation. That's not our fit. Your project starts when we do initiation. The idea is already there. Why? And then initiation, planning, implementation. We don't care what happens afterwards. Why? Why should we jump off the boat? I hate to see there. I remember a book where they had the project management and there's a finish line when the project finishes, like and then what happens next? Why have we never thought of, well, carry out and deliver what the project will produce? Why? And then the benefits, we kind of talk, but it's never been the main focus of project management. So this is 40 years of project management, many questions around that concept. I can see that it came from the public sector, and there's some limitations there because of the type of work. But when organizations started to embrace this, it doesn't make too much sense. So my future of project management, my view of project management now, and I think this will happen soon. Ideation, absolutely part of our scope, part of our competencies. We need to understand innovation. We need to understand design thinking. We need to understand when an idea is ready to be a project or an agile project or a prototype or an MVP. We need to play a role there. We need to feel a bit entrepreneurs as well. The shrinking of the white part has to be dramatic. 80% of that's gone. And we still need to do that. That's a key factor. That's a big part of what we know in our competencies. I think we'll run what we built in many cases. This happens in Alibaba. In Alibaba, if you have an idea, you get funded, you run the project, and then you become the business. You make the business, right? Why do we need to run and throw the project to somewhere else? I don't get it. And then the benefits, that's 40%. I don't think we should have plans on deliverables. We should have plans on benefits. That's what matters. And the sooner, the better. I don't want to wait. I cannot wait. Any company cannot wait. Societies cannot wait 4 years for having a project to be completed and then start having benefits. Imagine, that's not realistic anymore. So this is a complete flip of our scope of work, which I think is great. I just see it from a very positive thinking, because we have so much to do. There's this a huge opportunity to demonstrate really that we bring value. The project management office, I took that from the PM box. That's that. You see always in a box, in a hierarchy. Sorry, if you're working a PMO, you need to reinvent yourself very, very quickly. We were saying a PMO will last 3-4 years. If you're lucky, I think no, that will change. So I've been part of PMO and I'm struggling too. I don't have the formula. I just think that we need to become more agile. One big part, or a big opportunities for PMO is take the strategy implementation space. Now that projects are the main part and strategic planning is not so relevant, strategy implementation becomes. So that means saying, well, I want to be the implementation office of organization. That means I'll deliver the top strategic projects. And that means I bring 1,000 extra millions of revenue. So that's in my field. I'm the strategy implementation office. I'll take care of delivering projects. And I think for smaller transformation, digital M&A, we'll need to find a PMO, which is maybe going back to the old times where it was a temporary PMO. And I just don't know the facilitation that should go. So I tell you honestly, if I know or I don't know, or I have a view, with the PMO, I'm still struggling. And maybe some people have already gone deeper. If you look at the traditional PMO model, from project support to portfolio office, back, middle, front, I think artificial intelligence is going to take the back office, the middle office activities, capacity planning. I'm not sure we'll need to do capacity planning like in the past, training quality. And really the only space we can play, I think, is really driving change, driving projects, driving agile initiatives. So exciting times, I think, again, for the PMO. And I think then it comes to what we look at in our competencies. What do we want to deliver? What skills do we need? So I talked already, when operations was prime for the last 80 years, it was either you specialize in one area or you don't have a career path. And that happened to, I guess, most of you. If you're in project management, it was very hard to progress. It was very hard to, to be recognized for your contribution. The good news is machine learning, robots, artificial intelligence are taking the blue part. So now we are safe. Now the finance people need to worry. Now the sales people need to worry. No, we don't need to worry that much. And we're driven by change. This is really deep generalist. So not generalist, I think project managers, change managers, agile are generalist. I think what we need to develop is this more deep generalist. I have done quite some research on this, and it comes more and more often. Recently, McKinsey, this comes from the Future of Jobs Survey 2020, World Economic Forum. You have on the left the top 20 roles in high demand and will increase. On the other side is the ones that are going to disappear or less demand. You can see a lot about strategy, implementation, project management, digital transformation specialists. So all around that change implementation. On the other side, you see financial analysts, bank tellers, all these kind of more operational roles that were primary for many years. I did personally a survey together with HBR for the book. And one of the questions that we asked executives, about 600 CEOs around the world, how do you see project management competencies evolving in your organization over the next 5 years? About 80% said projects are essential for organization, and we want to invest and build project management competencies. One thing that is very different from the past is in the past, companies would train just project managers. So you'll have 5% of people in the organization, 20 people who will be trained project managers, maybe certified PMPs or Prince 2. That's it. The new reality is that everybody needs to be trained. Everybody needs to be trained, including senior executives. So I have more and more requests where they say, well, listen, we need for everybody. Everybody is dealing with projects, right? Why should not they learn how to do their projects better? So this is great news. I think great opportunity. And we're getting the confirmation from the top executives that they see they struggle always with projects. In terms of moving from one side to the other, so generally, I take project manager as an example. In the toolbox, you'll have mostly project management. That's what would be specialized. And then you will focus on that narrow view of the project lifecycle. That changes. That's not what we're looking for. What companies need are deep generalists, people who can implement big strategic initiative and change. So you need to build, I think we need to build all these tool sets, embrace Agile and Scrum and learn about, you don't need to be a master on all of this, but learn, because some projects, many of them will need to have a mix. Some of the other, maybe just don't do it as a project, just continuous improvement. And then we need to learn that ideation, innovation, entrepreneurship, mindset, and delivering the benefits. That's something that goes along with business understanding and so on. So here for me is the roadmap. What will we need to do to be successful as experts in the world driven by change or the project economy is the right side. So there's a lot of room for development for us and for the profession. I think one important element that we have not seen so far and where I focused a lot in the last years was the strategy implementation concept. So I've been running several PMOs, corporates, and I always had the challenge on how to develop my people. What are they going to do? Is project, program, portfolio, PMO, and then what's next? So I always felt that there was a gap in the market for people to, with 15 years, 20 years, what X? So you could go for an MBA, but that's super expensive and takes a couple of years. So I thought we need to develop something. So I spent quite some time developing what I call the strategy implementation roadmap. But basically the point is I realized that when people learn about strategy in our profession, it's not the point, not the top of the iceberg. So if you say, I want to learn strategy, and it opens up the world, it opens up much more opportunities in other fields like sustainability, other type of transformations, M&A, more senior management roles. So I think strategy is an important, it looks like the top layer of or development, but it does open a huge amount of roles. So that's kind of trends, big trends that I see and are happening. Maybe you see others, maybe they're impacting you more or less, but just wanted to set the scene. And I think the big change that happens, and I think to the point of this Congress, is that traditional project management has been very narrowly focused on the project scope and goals. This been what we need to deliver, right? This is how what determines success or not of a project, and we've lived with that many years, despite looking back. If you say that the Sydney Opera House was the worst project ever because they delivered late and with over budget, and yet in a year they recovered that and has become an icon. But yes, because of our focus on this triple constraint, we were not able to assess the impact. So the Sydney Opera House is a terrible project according to our KPIs. So I think this is a radical change. And while researching, I came across this huge initiative in the UK government, infrastructure strategy. It goes for 10 years at least. They launched it in December 2020, huge investment of 425 billion, 600 infrastructure projects around large-scale housing, regeneration projects, key social infrastructure, such as school, hospitals, and prisons. What they did is they didn't focus only on the traditional scope, cost, and time, but they added value and impact and sustainability and risk management. The other big element is about the engagement of the people. These are two triple constraints that I propose we should be thinking about or maybe using, is external ones, benefits and people. We don't know about the engagement of the people, yet is one of the most important drivers of success. So I think these are very important elements that we need to have in our KPIs when we're monitoring our projects. And I want to drill down on the benefit part, which is, I think, the big game changer that we need to perform. And this project in the UK was amazing because they were not just focusing on that small scope, but they were favoring sustainability, despite thinking that in the short term might be more expensive to think about more sustainable sources or material. They favor projects which were positive on nature and sustainability. So they didn't remain on the natural scope of the project of building a school or building houses, but how can we make them more sustainable? They leverage on diversity. They used they had a charter for diversity. They really embraced diversity as a part of their ways of working every day, very big in the agenda, and they really follow it and implement. So, which had really positive impact. Of course, diversity is great for project performance. They address the crisis. I think the world is in crisis. So it's not just about sustainability, but it's also about providing jobs for people and help them come out from this financial crisis that came through the pandemic. So how can we just go beyond, again, the housing to create more employment through different means? So favoring this type of project, thinking about these benefits with early stages if your project definition and programs had enormous impact. And the last one, they didn't care apart from technology. They started to use some advanced algorithms to minimize bureaucracy in the projects around reporting and risk management. So I think this is the future, basically, of project management. We need to move from that traditional, very narrow focus to one that is much broader, who favors sustainability, leverage diversity, helps to the issues in the society, and then smarter technologies. And you would think, well, yeah, this is public sector. Well, I think this is more and more blurry. I think organizations, private organizations, profit-driven organizations are looking into this too. So if you are running projects for your organization and it's a private or for profit, I think you need to start seeing this. At least for sure, sustainability, it's a key factor now more and more when you're building your business cases, but the others too. How can we leverage diversity with my projects in my company? How can I use better the technology, not just the Excel or macros, but look out there and what's available? And then what are the big challenges that we're facing as an organization, and how can we address them through my project? So it's really opening up, and again, a world of opportunities. I'm super excited that we are seeing the light. We're seeing that we can deliver more, much more than we were told. And the last part, and for me, it's part of that magic formula. Sorry, I think I skipped 2 slides, which are quite important. And I don't know why they don't show. Sorry. These ones. So I think the other big thing that I wanted to share before I just wrap up is then I've been in the vaccine world for a few years, and everybody was telling before that minimum it would take 12 to 15 years to develop a new vaccine. And we've seen that we were completely wrong. The most expert people in vaccine development were completely wrong, because it was developed in 10 months. So me, a researcher in projects, I was fascinated by this. How can you do something 10 times faster than what you originally thought? What was the convention? I use my concept, which is the project canvas. You cannot see it there, but of course it's free for download. But if you look at what did this project, what's the magic formula? They had a higher purpose. There was no doubt about the purpose. It was to develop a safe and effective vaccine. So purpose, higher purpose is a must in most of these big game changer projects. The CEO of BioNTech was a great sponsor. One of the biggest gaps and failures in project management is the sponsor. They don't know what to do. They don't know, they're not prepared to do their jobs. So in this case, top, fully dedicated, committed, bringing resources, participating and supporting the project team. Very flat structure. It was easy to communicate, a bit of an agile approach to that respect. So getting really into a bit of a startup environment was crucial. Moving out of that old structure, old culture, shifting into a different parallel structure, much more beneficial. The project team was encouraged to take risk, as opposed to most of the cases. Look for risk, take risk. There's psychological safety. Fully dedicated team, of course, best of the best. Very interesting in this project, all the stakeholders, including regulators, which often are blocking and slowing down. In this case, we're solely on board. What can we do to facilitate, to make this happen? Regulators, competitors who usually would not share much in the pharma world, they were sharing. So think about that. They created a bit of an ecosystem with people that you never did before, competitors and regulators. And they developed this long-term partnership with vendors, more just than one-off and sales, was partnership, a big ecosystem. So if this happened, and we know the formula behind, of course, this is just a summary, I think that we can solve any problem in the world. I think by applying this concept, by replicating what happened with the COVID-19 vaccine, by replicating these fundamentals, we could address most of the issues in sustainable development. And not just that, we can do it 10 times faster than what we think. 10 times faster. Of course, it's a big challenge to get. Where is the sense of urgency, right? One thing that drove the whole thing was the sense of urgency. Well, with climate, we kind of see sense of urgency, but I don't think people feel it. I think there's still some people who are doubting about that. So I think it's up to us now to predicate, to advocate. This is something that I'm trying really hard, is we have the formula. I see it like the world has been in very cloudy and dark and for years, and the COVID vaccine development project has been the light. Say, this is the formula to solve many of your problems, and you can do it much faster than you did, but you need to get the people on board, like the case there. So I'm very excited. I think we have a couple of years to make this big and make this the big decision makers aware that we have the solution now. Maybe not 100%, but we can accelerate many of these resolutions with the formula that we've seen. And the last point I want to make, I think this is more about of a mindset of a step change. If the project management profession, and again, I talk project management, but I embrace business analysts, change managers, agile people, is that we need to step up as a profession. According to most of the research I've seen and studies, 70%, 65% of the project failed to deliver completely or partially. This is, I was looking at the Standish report, and over the last 10 years, no progress. It's just still the same. And I think there's very few professions which has this high failure rate. Imagine if 7 out of 10 operations in a hospital you will die. 7 out of 10. Well, that's normal. We get used to it. It's very hard. We didn't get support. Or 7 planes out of 10 crash. Yeah, well, we get used to it. It's okay. We live with that. Well, I think it's not okay. I think it's time to step up. I think project managers should drive change, should be accountable for the benefits. I always love this definition of the sponsor is accountable, the project manager is responsible. So it's not my problem, the benefits. I think the project economy requires that we step up and we are accountable. We feel entrepreneurs, we feel CEOs of our projects. We really thrive to deliver change and impact, not just revenues, but all the rest. So, and in my calculations, if we just double our success rate, just double, and doesn't mean more investment, just do our projects better, we will generate to the world the GDP of China every year. This is massive. Imagine what can we do with that. So if there's a mission or a call for action, I think for the profession is we need to do our projects better. Yes, sustainable, of course, and diversity, of course, but let's do the projects better. Let's deliver more impact, and that's going to have an impact, and we're going to be much more credible among senior leaders and leaders around the world. And with that, you can find more info on my website. I have a LinkedIn newsletter where every week I talk about topics around projects, the HBR book coming out next week, and the Strategy Implementation Institute. Yeah, and I just launched a LinkedIn learning course yesterday, how to be an effective project sponsor. So if your bosses or you want to learn a bit more, it's in LinkedIn Learning. So that's all. Thank you very much. I hope you you like the presentation, and I think we have a few minutes for discussion.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Antonio. It was a very good presentation, a lot of insights and a lot of great things. There are some questions. First of all, there's a remark from Stuart, and I agree with that. The switch from deliverables to benefits is a very nice one. I have a question from Willem. I will read it to you, and if he wants to give comment, he can switch on his camera. So he asks, are organizations that aren't efficient now convicted to disappear?
Good question, William. No, I think efficiency needs to remain. This is no doubt. We're building change on efficiency. Well, basically, if they're not efficient, yes, of course, they will pay for that. The thing is about efficiency is that many of these things are now carried out by robots and machine learning, which are much more efficient than us and make less mistakes. So, but you cannot live without that operational part. It's just saying it's shrinking and it's becoming less of a centerpiece. But it's always there and needs to be managed. Thank you, William.
But if they spend a lot of time and money on the efficiency part because they're not efficient enough, they will lag behind on other competitors.
Of course, yeah. So it's kind of a basis, foundation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question from Alice, and she says, if your organization is major with project management, do you let corporate level PMO to cover the function of portfolio management? If yes, is such PMO going to retire soon as well?
I think the corporate PMOs, I think my experience personal, at least, is that I moved from PMO to portfolio management without anybody telling me or changing in the role of the PMO. I just thought, where can I add more value? And it happened when I started to force executives to prioritize the projects because we had too many. And I forced them to cut projects and stop them, and they were not used to that. And so it kind of became my role more around strategy and what the company wants to do and which projects are behind and how are we progressing against them. So I think the PMO has to be evolving corporate. That's what I was talking, moving into more a strategic office where you facilitate dialogue around implementation, about choices, about investments, rather than the reporting and maybe the capability buildings, which was a big focus, or the methodology development, which was a big focus. So I think that's the way I've experienced. That's the way I believe it should move. So if you keep just doing what we were doing in the past, the reporting, the methodologies, I think that will probably retire soon.
Thank you. Is that
Thank
okay?
you, Alice.
Is that okay for you, Alice, as an answer? You can unmute yourself if you want.
And you can disagree.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. It's clear. I experienced the same as you, Antonio.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you. I have a rather important remark from Stuart, but I'm not going to read it. I'm going to give him the word. It's about the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jacques. Yes, so Antonio, I was very interested in the graph you showed quite early on, where you showed the disruptive influence of the pandemic. Now, my personal view is that climate change is somehow similar, but probably much, much bigger. And it will have probably, if you did the same graph in the future, almost certainly the next stage up the pandemic, climate change is likely to have a much bigger effect. And you also talked about the big higher purpose, where I think pandemic, there's a big higher purpose that's influenced, and also obviously the same is true with climate action, with climate change. So I'd be interested in your views relating to that. You put up the SDGs, but welcome your thoughts there.
Sure, thank you. Great question. I think I completely agree. I'm convinced. I'm convinced, but I'm not sure people see it as with the same kind of severity as the urgency with the pandemic. And unless you are in an area where, like you were talking the other day about rent in Germany, or unless it affects you directly, people still agree. I think there's no doubt that's the nice part of sustainability transformation, is that most of the people are buying, but then make them embrace it and make the changes takes time. So I'm afraid that we're not at the same level of severity in the sense of urgency. If tomorrow the world will stop because of climate change, and that I hope, I don't know if it's good or bad, but can be dramatic, maybe more than the pandemic, then that's where the people will get together. We need to solve this issue. And I think we're just kicking the can. We're getting better. When I see goals for 2050, I say, come on, 2050? Be a bit more ambitious. I was talking to the commission and say, you are not inspiring anybody with 2050. We need to feel the pressure. Put us 2030 or 2025. If we fail, who cares? We'll still make more progress than in 2050. So I think we lack that leadership as well. So it's my view, maybe you know more, Stuart, but I feel that sense of urgency is not so strong. Is strong, but not as dramatic.
Indeed, yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to make it stronger, but some real strong intermediate goals, 2050 away. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, Stuart.
Great, thank you, Stuart. I have someone else who has a question, and I just asked him to unmute the mic and ask it himself.
Yeah, hi Antonio, it's Chris here.
Hi,
I just
Chris.
wanted to come back to your point again, the pandemic, perhaps it's going to be relevant for the climate change as well. But I think with the pandemic, yes, I totally agree. I'm in the pharma sector, so I know what crazy time it was. But yeah, everybody was having that same purpose, which also meant that other projects were set aside. Because yeah, you have a limited amount of resources, whatever you do. So how do you feel that in the future there's going to be that strategic way of deciding what takes priority? I mean, to your point, nobody really, or not everybody at the moment feels that climate change is important. So those projects, if you have to choose as a company or as a government, I think it comes down to who shouts hardest to get it done. So how can we change that to do something that is really benefit driven?
Creates a great point. I think we've seen extreme prioritization with COVID, and this is something that we've always said in the profession. Less is more. Be more focused on prioritization. Never start a project if you don't stop one or two or finish them. And nobody really cared, right? They were launching projects and on to the point that some of the companies I talk, they have more projects than people. So how can you do that? So I think that happened really nicely. People prioritize. When I look at the benefits of how organization reacted, I say extreme prioritization is one of them. They saw the benefits. They really choose a few projects. They put the best people. They got personally involved, the senior leaders. And my worry is that that will disappear and will go back to normal. So I don't know how we can change. I'm trying to just tell these stories, say, listen, your business survived and now is doing better because of that. So keep doing that. And that's, I think, the way I try to address it, predicating, sharing. And I think we can do that in this community, saying we've learned the lessons. Let's use it. Don't go back to the past. It's just not going to work. So that's my view, Chris. Sorry, I don't have a bigger plan for that.
No crystal ball then. Yeah,
no.
Thank you.
Not yet.
Great. Thank you again, Antonio.
Thank you, everyone.
I think that we have to stop here.
Okay.
We could continue for hours, I think, with this very interesting insights.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I'm going to save the chat that I can always show you afterwards what's on it. And everyone has your contact details. So
yeah, of course.
Extra questions, they can always contact you. Okay. Thank you a lot, Antonio.
Thank you. Take care.
It was a pleasure seeing you again. Although it was not in real, but I will stop the recording now.